R. Michael Anderson, welcome to Shrink Wrap Radio.
Hey, David, happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you here. You have a very interesting backstory, and that might be the place for us to start. How about you take us through kind of the major stepping stones that have marked your career, your life, etc.?
I think I'm a poster boy for the hero's journey. So
I'm very interested in the hero's journey.
Yes. So, I've had some downs and ups, the short story is I found myself successful, but not happy. So, in my life, I was good at achieving. I played semi-pro basketball, lived in 6 countries. I was really well known for being a successful software entrepreneur in San Diego, California. My companies were on the Inc. 500, 5,000 fastest growing companies. I used to party at the Playboy Mansion, which was fun. So on my outside of my life, everything looked great, but internally, I didn't have any joy and fulfillment. And, there's a history of substance abuse in my family. And at the time I was binge drinking, as well as doing a lot of hard drugs. I had a business partner in one of my companies, and he actually assaulted me. In the middle of the office, I got hit by my business partner.
Because?
Yeah. Well, overall at that time, we were having a disagreement about ownership percentages. And he was a substance abuser too. And he got angry at me for I think there was a lot of underlying reasons, but it was just a sort of a general operational thing. And he ended up slugging me on a Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the middle of the office.
That left an impression on your memory, evidently. You remember the time and everything.
It was a turning point because, it was April 1st, 2008. And I was going through a divorce at the same time. And like a lot of people, especially a lot of entrepreneurs, because my home life wasn't great, I put all my effort and all my energy into my work life. And, this company, which I started literally out of the back of my car, and all of a sudden we're doing a couple $1 million a year in just a couple of years. I brought this guy on to help because I was insecure. It was my first business and I wanted companionship because the pressure was all new to me. There were so many new things. So I gave him some equity. And and it grew so quick. There was just all this pressure. And of course, both me and him, we stepped up our substance abuse because that was what escaped us from all the pressure. And then it came to that boiling point when he assaulted me. But that evening that I remember very clearly because I was really reflecting on my life. And I was thinking, what's going on here? Because, at the time I married the pretty girl, obviously that was falling apart. I was making this money. I was having success. I was well known in San Diego for business achievements, but I didn't have any internal joy and fulfillment. And I was going to do some coke and smoke some weed, and drink some whiskey, which is how I normally dealt with problems around that time in my life. And
how old were you during the period that you're describing?
So I'm 46 now, and I was, I think, 35, 36. I guess we do that right around.
And how is it that you were a serial entrepreneur? That was your first company. You went on to do others. How did you get to be so successful? What was it about you in terms of, how? Was it training? Was it just instinctual?
I've always been a pretty sharp and a pretty driven guy. Obviously from the psychological standpoint, I was proving my worth through achievements.
Mm-hmm.
I was really shy growing up. I know you can't tell sitting down, but I'm about 6'8", and
wow.
which people say it's awesome being tall, but when I was a kid, it was really awkward being tall, and I was introverted, and so it was difficult. But then I started achieving, whether it was basketball and then later business. I really found myself getting accepted by groups of people. And so in a way I got addicted to this success and success.
And they say height is correlated with success in earnings in the business world. So it's too bad nobody explained that to you when you were a kid.
Yeah, they should remind kids, you know, 'cause I was tall and skinny and awkward. And,
Yeah.
and then so I started getting a taste of success. And then to me, it was like I was finally getting accepted by other people. And then I got like addicted to that success, you might say. But then, you know, I had the success, and after a bunch of years, I had success over a long period of time, but I didn't have happiness. I knew I didn't have an inner peace. I saw it in other people. And, you know, tell people I was a bit of an ass. You know, I was really aggressive in an insecure way. I would take the other side of arguments, of discussions, just to get a rise out of people, as it was. And I was,
well, I'm sure glad you changed.
I'd be a worse guest, I think.
Right. So what was the turnaround moment? Was when your partner punched you? Was that the turnaround moment, would you say, of your transformation?
Yeah, I think that evening, because, you know, that assault really put me into a reflective time. And that reflective time really was like, what's going on? Because I am having success. I am, you know, achieving what I set out to do, whether it's money or success. And I wasn't happy. People would say, Michael, you have such a great life. And I was thinking to myself, my life sucks. I really don't enjoy this. And, you know, that evening, in fact, David, I remember I said, you know, I made 2 life-changing decisions. Instead of self-medicating myself, I went for a jog. I went for a run. So instead of taking myself down, I took myself up. And I said, it looks like I'm asking the wrong questions of myself. I'm setting the wrong goals. So so what I did is I set a goal to become happy. I set a goal to become fulfilled. Because I think I was like one step away. I was setting a goal to make money to become fulfilled, or set a goal to be this successful to be happy. But instead I'm like, let's skip that middle part and go right to the real part. And that's when I found the University of Santa Monica and the Master's in Spiritual Psychology, which was just, I don't use the word transformational much because I think it's really thrown around a lot, but it was totally transformational to me. I mean, it turned my life around 180 degrees.
Wow. Now that was like, in a way, like therapy for you, or did you also do therapy either prior or subsequently?
Well, it's really experiential. The program is really wonderful. We have a lot of psychologists go to it because it takes such a loving view of humanity. We take the assumption that we're all perfect the way we are, and it really we work a lot on self-compassion, and which always isn't taught or isn't embraced by some other areas of psychology. But it's really experiential. What I mean by that is, like, we learned 6 psychoanalysis techniques. We learned Gestalt, NLP, psychosynthesis, rational emotive, Rogerian, one more. But there's 250 people in class, and we would learn a skill or a counseling technique, and then we would break into groups of 3. So, like, for example, David, you would counsel me on something, so I would get to work on an issue, and then somebody would observe, and then we'd switch.
Yep. I actually taught a counseling course for many years and used that sort of model.
But it's wonderful because, you know, I got to be I got to work on my own issues. And I can't understand why everybody doesn't put these in, because it's so experiential. It's like on the job training. Right.
That is exactly the kind of teaching that I did and wanted to do. And was this in person or online?
It was in person. It was 1 weekend a month. So it was like an executive program-ish.
Okay.
And then between classes, we actually worked on a self-counseling. So to really dig deeper, they teach us a self-counseling technique for us to really work on our own issues with ourselves, which is the safest place you can do it. So
tell us a little bit about that, because I don't think that's ever come up in the interview before. They must have given you some sort of structure for approaching the self-counseling.
It is. There's a little structure, but it's as simple as asking a question. You would put, like, it's almost like a screenplay, counselor, and then what I would ask myself, and then what I would ask myself in the client chair. But I have one story that really talks about my substance abuse, and it shares an experience that we went through.
Good.
So we did what's called a history of loving. So it's a genogram where we do a family tree. It's based off sort of Family Secrets by John Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Pretty well-known book.
Right.
So we basically did a family tree, and then we mapped out our substance abuse, our divorces, our enmeshments, all these different things. And then for me, my dad was a failed entrepreneur, alcoholic with multiple marriages. His dad was a failed entrepreneur, multiple marriages, alcoholic. And David, just to see it so clearly in my lineage was like, whoa.
Yeah, really.
So I got to know, so we saw that, but then how do you heal it? So this, and I'm summarizing a bit here, but what I did is my dad, this is, 8 years ago, but my dad had already been passed away for 10 years. So he wasn't living anymore.
Okay.
But what I did is I wrote a letter to him sort of as my little kid. And then on behalf of him, he wrote a letter back. I wrote a letter from him back to me. And my dad, just to give some context, he was an entrepreneur, but when I was around 5, it didn't do well. His business started going down, and then he started drinking. He spent less time away from our family. Then he left our family, and it was, really traumatic to me as a 12-year-old kid at that point. And so, I really connected with the kid inside of me, and I wrote, "Hey, Dad, I don't understand why you left me and my sister and my mom. Why did you leave us? What did I do? I knew mentally, but I think part of me was still like, what could I have done differently? Wasn't I smart enough? Didn't I do this? Didn't I do that? What could I have done differently? You never tell me you love me. You never told me you're proud of me. So, I don't understand, Dad. Just let me know what I could have done differently." And then David, the letter that I wrote on behalf of him back to me, and I know this is a truth because it just rings so well. I said, "Michael, you got it all wrong. And I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. But I'm the man of this family, and I failed you. I failed you, your sister, your mother. I was supposed to be the person that provided. I couldn't do that." And he said, "That's why I started drinking, because when I couldn't take the failure. And, you guys are just better off without me. I don't want you to be like me. So I separated myself from the family." And so, I went from thinking that I did something wrong in this relationship to my dad loved us so much in his screwed up way. He did what he would thought was good. And, at that point I quit drugs and alcohol. I mean, it was like I healed the core belief that was holding me back.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I'm sure there are people in the audience that might want to take on that sort of process themselves, and that kind of gives a little bit of guidance. Was there any reading assignment that related to that self-therapy that you could pass along? Was there a book or anything?
Whew. The two teachers, the husband and wife team, wrote a book called Loyalty to Your Soul, because everything we teach is really about self-compassion when you get down to it. And the spiritual part is nothing to do with religion, but we do take the assumption that we're our soul or our core is we're loving beings. And so even when we use some of the non-Rogerian, for example, techniques, we do it through a lens of love and compassion. So there's no lobotomies in class or anything, like no shock therapy. But we really help people to connect, we say, with the love that we already are. And we use clearing psychological unresolved issues in service to getting back to our core essence of love.
Okay. Do you teach in that program now? The way you just said that gave me the impression that maybe you are teaching.
I'm not teaching, but my book's Soul-Centered Leadership, and what I teach leaders, because, my background is leadership. And when I learned all these things, and and I put them into my business started thriving. And it's like I was excited about work again. And we actually won, for example, best places to work in San Diego in our category.
Great.
Thanks. And, I say it's a third psychology, is a third emotional intelligence, a third spirituality, from a very general, loving view of spirituality. In the fact of intuition, hero's journey, like what do we put on this earth to do is create. Because I think that the business leaders, and I know you have a background in business too, it's like we affect so many people. And when we can really get rid of our ego and stop being so ego driven and really come with our heart and our soul and that love, it's just such a beautiful thing. It creates such beauty for everybody around us.
Mm-hmm. Can you be more specific in terms of how you applied that in your business, how you applied that with the people who are working with you or under you, people that you hired?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that when I learned about judgments and what a judgment is, and just so we're all on the same page, to me, what a judgment is it's the Buddhists say when something happens that it is, and the way our school defines judgments is as humans, we attach a positive or a negative to that. Mm-hmm. And when I would go, I would be what I call a drama queen. So I would get a call from a customer, and they said, "Hey, we might buy your product." I would get like sky high, and the next thing, an employee might say, "Hey, I'm going to be off next week. I'm going on vacation." I'd be like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" So my energy was up and down, up and down. And so when I learned, and at the end of the day, I'd be exhausted from all the roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And what I realized, and when I learned what a judgment, it's like when they taught it in 5 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. But I come from a judgmental family. I always thought judgments were normal. That's what you did. You said, this is good or this is horrible. And when I started really working on just taking things as information, my energy was so much higher at the end of the day. I was such a better decision maker. I was calm under pressure. And that's the type of leader I want to be. I want to look at things, just nothing's good or bad. It just is. And when I can take that as information, I'm so much more of a calm, level-headed person.
Mm-hmm. Boy, it sounds like you were just a sponge and were very quickly and able to just soak up these pieces of guidance that you got in that program.
I wish that was true. I think.
Did you have to work at it? Was it?
Well, yeah, the first year, this was, and I was, I had no emotional intelligence or spirituality or psychology in my life before this program. And so I was coming from one extreme to the other. And the first year of the program, I really resisted it. I would, in fact, I went to the teacher and I'm like, I get this, but I don't get this. And I don't understand this. And finally he goes, Michael, relax. Your analytical mind is trying to figure out everything. And he's like, and your analytical mind, you're so overly analytical. The only thing I'm not going to tell you anything right now that you're really going to get it. So you're just going to have to just go and do the homework and keep reading, and then you're going to get it. Of course, that's not what my ego wanted to hear, but he was exactly right. And I, in a way, I surrendered to the process, and I just had faith. And he's right. After a couple more months, it really started to click for me.
Wow. So I understand that at age 46, which would only be a couple of years ago, you decided to follow your heart. You sold most of your belongings, and you report that you now live nomadically, traveling the world and spreading your message. In fact, you're in Croatia as we're speaking. I'm in Northern California. You're in Croatia. Feels pretty much like we're together. Tell us about that transition. That sounds, I think I fantasized something along those lines at one point or another in my life. I suspect many of us have just thought, I'd just like to get rid of all this crap and go on the road. How was that for you?
Well, like anything else, it sounds a lot easier than it was because, the first half of my adult life, I lived in 6 countries. So I was really, I really lived globally. And I was back in San Diego for 10 years. And that's when I started my companies. I did some really good things with some nonprofits. I really built up a lot. After 7 years, David, it's like I started getting in a funk. And what I mean by that is like work all of a sudden became hard. It's like I had some close circles of friends and they sort of disappeared for no reason. And I just felt myself just, even though I had a strong spiritual and psychological, when I say it, practice with myself, I was meditating and had a, good support system. I was just like in a funk. I wasn't enjoying life like I used to. I even moved different places in San Diego to get it back. And I couldn't understand what was going on in my life. But then I looked back and like when I had a trip out of town, I would get really excited for it. I would feel really alive on the trip. But after a couple of days back, I would feel like I was in a funk again. And I look back at my life, and every time I made a major move to another city or country, my life upgraded. And so I'm like, well, I'm divorced with no kids. I as a speaker and an author, I have a lot of freedom. So I put all my stuff in storage, and this is less than a year ago. And I basically just started traveling, and I just felt so alive. It's funny because a friend of mine, she's actually, so bear with me, she's a psychic, and she does a podcast, and literally as my stuff is packed up, I'm driving out of San Diego. I was a guest on her podcast. I said, why don't you read me on your podcast? And she goes, that's a cool idea. So David, once I sat down and I gave some context where I was at, she goes, well, Michael, the funny thing is San Diego's done with you. You weren't in San Diego for you. You were in San Diego for someone else, to help other people. And so you did that and you were done. So San Diego's been trying to kick you out for a couple of years now. It was funny. And people ask, like, do I totally believe in psychics or not? I don't know. It's just information. And it was fun. And her name's Katie Bray, and she's really wonderful. And it's but to me, David, it's like, that made it okay. Cause I was a well-known entrepreneur. My network was my asset, and I was getting rid of my biggest asset, my local network there. And so I was really judging all of it. But when Katie said that on her podcast, I was like, it sort of gave it context, and I was like, it's okay. So then I traveled around for a while, and then I'm like, man, I don't need all this crap. So I went and I just sold everything, which was weird. I got to admit, it was sometimes I still think, do I really? Because I had nice furniture, all these clothes. I got 2 suitcases with me. I got one plus some files with some relatives, and I literally have nothing else to my name.
Wow.
It's so freeing. It's a little weird, but yeah, it's really freeing.
It sounds a little bit like being on vacation permanently, or at least for a period of time.
It is. And I'm like, well, why can't I live on vacation all the time? And I don't make plans unless I need to. Like, for example, people like, I'm in Croatia for a couple months because my ancestors are from here, and I had some speaking engagements out here. I wanted to finish my book. And then it's getting cold. I'm like, well, if I can live anywhere I want, I don't want to live where it's cold at. And so I was like, well, where am I going to go? But then I was going to maybe go to Thailand, but it didn't feel right. But then my mom broke her arm in Texas. And then so it really felt right to go back and help her out. And I'm really excited to get connected with my mom again because, she's 70 and I haven't really lived, I haven't spent meaningful time with her over a week or two. So, it's like, to me, I get rid of control is my lifelong lesson to let go of. And the more I let go of control, the more great things pop up into my life. So I guess that might be the spiritual part of spiritual psychology.
Yeah. When you say things pop up, one of the fantasies I have about your life, based on my own experience, I guess, is that when you're really sort of on that hero's journey, when you're in that, really following that path, a lot of synchronicities I've observed tend to pop up. And I'm wondering if you have had that experience of synchronicities in this journey.
I totally do. And I think the reason I have synchronicities is because I allow the space for it. I'm not going 99 miles an hour with everything in my life planned, which takes me effort to not do that because I have a planning mentality. So, I'm like, Michael, you got too much stuff on the calendar. What can I get rid of for my to-do list? And you're right. For example, once I left on my trip, my friend who owns a marketing company, she called me and she's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, look, truly nothing, And she was her and some friends bid on they were at a charity auction. They bid on a private island for a week in Belize. And she's like, we got an extra spot because they were married and we're just friends. She didn't want to be like the fifth wheel. She's like, you want to come and spend a week on a private island in Belize? I'm like, yes, I do want to do that. I'm in this world-class vacation just because, like you said, the synchronicities popped up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell us a bit about your book, because that's a significant thing, accomplishment. Is it out yet? Because somewhere I got the idea it was coming out in 2017, and we're almost there.
It is. It's coming out. It's coming out January 12th, 2017. And if listeners want to go to soul-centered-leadership.com, they can go and sign up for the pre-release, which the week before I'm going to give some bonuses, as well as you can, if you're on the list, you can buy the book for under $1 before the release.
Wow.
I just would like everybody to give me that Amazon review, which is really crucial. But, going through these things, I just, leadership is hard. Leadership is scary because by definition, we have in a job, we'll have this type of responsibilities and these type of duties. And then we either start our own business or we buck for that promotion. We get that promotion. All of a sudden we have these type of duties and these type of responsibilities. Normally we get no training, no support. Then we get insecure about things because we're freaked out because everybody's looking at us under a microscope. And that insecurity causes poor leadership. Whether it's micromanagement, lack of transparency, it's not trusting people. And then once I think people get caught in that, then it's hard to get out of that. And, to me, the things that you and I teach, David, when you put that into a leadership context, and people can start being okay with not being perfect, they can be a vulnerable leader in a healthy way, because there's, to me, healthy vulnerability and unhealthy vulnerability. That's what creates loyalty. That's what creates intimacy. That's what creates, and for us to have a purpose instead of just make money, because to me, when I really switched my companies to being of service to my customers and the community, it became so much more fun for me, my employees, my customers got on board, my suppliers. It really, there's so much negativity in the world, but there's also so much positivity. And when we can bring that positivity and that strength and help people unlock the natural leaders within them, to me, there's nothing more fulfilling than doing that.
The notion of a vulnerable leader has some resonance for me when I hear you say that. As you say, vulnerability can be a negative thing, but I really subscribe to what you're saying, that when we are transparent and we let people know something about what's going on inside us and so on, that it recruits that other person into wanting to do the same thing.
It does, and it happens on an organizational basis. I was working with one CEO, and they had, for 10 years straight, they had some great growth. Then their industry went into a downturn, and he wasn't used to that. And didn't even lose because he was so strong. They sort of leveled out. But they had to start watching spending and such, and they were having an all company meeting. I think it was a quarterly meeting. I said, well, what are you going to tell everybody? He's like, well, I'm going to tell them everything's fine. I'm like, well, is it fine? He's like, no way. No, it's absolutely not fine. We may have to do layoffs for the first time ever, et cetera. I said, well, do your employees know that it's not fine? He's like, yeah, well, they're not stupid. They see, it's a close-knit industry, and they're not stupid. They see what's happening. I said, well, what do you think is going to happen when you tell them everything's fine and they know it's not fine? He thought for a minute. He's like, oh, shoot, they're probably going to think that they're going to get laid off. I'm like, yeah, they're probably going to start looking for other jobs. I said, oh, shoot. I said, well, and I worked with him. And so when he came to the quarterly meeting, he said, all right, everybody, we've had a good run, and I just want to be transparent. The industry's in the downturn. And so, we're not going to have growth this year. We have to sort of tighten the belt loop. And he goes, look, I can't even truthfully tell you we're not going to do layoffs at all. But with your help, maybe we can avoid them. And I'd like to do whatever I can to keep our team intact. And David, he said it was like this elephant, the proverbial elephant left the room, because they were all thinking that, but he put it out there, and it's like, he's going to be honest with us when in this hard time. he said, it was amazing how they responded, because all of a sudden people were like, hey, I don't have to work 5 days a week. I have a kid. Why don't I go down to 3 days a week, take a reduced salary, and then you can free up that cash. Other people were like, hey, we don't have to do this in shipping. I don't need a new computer. And he said it was awesome because they actually became stronger by banding together.
Yeah, that was brilliant to invite them, to not only let them know that there was going to be shrinkage, but to invite them to be part of the solution. And that brought out the best in them, the noblest, highest parts of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for him. And I've had to deliver that type of news before. And it's like, how are they going to react? And, it's like, oh my God, are they going to lose faith in me as a leader? And to me, this type of leadership takes a lot more courage than the other type of leadership. To me, admitting we're not perfect is not always easy or fun.
Yeah. Now, many of us, people who aren't in business, which are the kinds of examples we've been using, but don't we all, most of us, find ourselves in some kind of a leadership role in the course of our lives, whether it be a mother with her kids, their leadership demands there, or at the PTA and so on?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, oftentimes people are the leaders of their family, or even if if they're organizing an event, whether it's a wedding or birthday, they're leaders there. You mentioned PTA. If you're a therapist and you have a client, in a way, you're leading them in that session, because they're paying you to set up and get a specific outcome, and so you take a leadership position there.
Yeah. So do you think there are ideas in your book that would help people who are in those sorts of leadership roles?
That's a great thing, because if you've ever been, talking to the listeners and the viewers, if you've ever been in a position where all of a sudden you have a responsibility, you're like, oh crap, what do I do? Or you doubt yourself. First of all, that's normal. It's all of us, right? And some of us are just better at hiding it, but yes, it happens to all of us. There's, especially if you like and enjoy psychology, I teach you how to apply psychology to your leadership positions, and again, or leadership situations, to make it easier on you. Because that's really my goal, is for you to have some compassion with yourself. And I give, really, to me, easy to use tools. And I think there's 24 skills in there that get rid of our limiting beliefs, that get rid of our attachments. And what's really fun is, if you do like psychology, you're like, oh, I know that psychology, I know what an attachment is. And so here's how it plays out in leadership. And here's how that might hold you back, or might set you free by getting rid of an attachment.
Yeah. That sounds great. So where do you see yourself going from here? Let's say in 10 years, what would you expect your life to look like?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I try not to get too attached to things, but I'm not going to lie to you and say I don't get attached to things. I love what I'm doing. And to me, I believe so much in my message, and I believe there's so many leaders out there that are people in leadership positions that just could use this. I just want to do this on bigger and bigger stages. And, I'd like to, I'm building a small team, and I built a big team before, and that's not something that's fun for me. Again, it was fun once, but it took me a lot of energy. I want a small, close-knit team. I want to have some freedom, and I just want to give back. I mean, I didn't do any volunteering until about 10 years ago, but then, giving back has been such a theme of my life. A lot of people call it a service mindset. For example, David, I'm sure you don't make millions of dollars off this podcast, but I'm sure but to me, I'd assume that the feedback you get from people to say, hey, this really touched my life, is invaluable.
Yeah, that's what keeps me going. A lot of people see business success and soul as opposites. Evidently you don't. Tell us about that.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because for me, once I did this spiritual psychology, I thought of myself as this really loving, warm, caring guy in my personal life. But then I thought I thought that I'm this really ruthless, win at all cost guy in my business life. And I realized that there's no reason they can't that they can't coexist, that I can't be a compassionate, loving, caring person all over. I mean, it's there's no reason, and I thought that was like a sign of weakness for some reason. And I realized that truly being true to myself, the organization, and other people around me was true integrity. For example, to me, the most compassionate thing sometimes you can do is fire somebody. If somebody is not working out, they're not having fun, you're telling other people that it's okay not to be productive. And so sometimes, the most loving, compassionate thing you can do in a loving, compassionate way is let somebody go from your organization. And whether, again, that is the PTA or that is the, a large organization, you're actually giving them a chance to A, maybe learn a life lesson, and B, also to find somewhere they're productive.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to fire people, but as a business person, as a leader, in a way, your loyalty has to be number one to the entity, to the organization, because without a strong organization, there is no customers, there is no employees, there is no ecosystem and stakeholders. When you do that with a stakeholder focus, so a lot of, what I really believe in, if you take care of your employees, they're going to take care of your customers. So as a leader, I want to create a great internal team that's really, and to me, it's up to me to create a great space for them, because when they thrive, I don't have to worry about the customers because they're worried about the customers. Because as a CEO, I'm not the first line of defense when the customer calls up with an issue.
Yeah, yeah. Now, along with business success, hopefully comes money. But a lot of us have a very tortured relationship with money and what it means and so on. So what was your take on that? What is your take now? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's changed.
One of the things that really was freeing for me, and one of the things I teach that's really deep, is like self-limiting beliefs. Like there are intergenerational patterns around money, around wealth, around success. Right now you mentioned I'm in Zagreb, Croatia, which it used to be communist 30 years ago. And so there's like these subconscious beliefs that you're not worthy of money. Or if you're worthy of money, you're a crook, or if you get success, you're something. So there's people that get success have so much guilt. Even me, because I actually come from a Croatian ancestors, and we have this real blue collar mentality. I achieved what I think was like the holy grail of entrepreneurship, where I had a good middle management that I could delegate to. I had to work 10 to 20 hours a week. We were making great cash flow, I was making great money. But I found myself guilty that they were working hard and we were making money. So instead of working just 10 or 20 hours a week and having fun or doing something else, I would make up projects, and I would be working 40, 50, 60 hours a week on these BS projects because I felt guilty because I wasn't in the office. So I couldn't even enjoy, something that I worked so hard to bring in.
Yeah.
I had all these beliefs nagging at me.
Yeah. So, I think many people have a sense that money is evil, or, What more can you tell us about that? I have a feeling there's more there.
Yeah. And some people think, am I worthy of success? That worthiness, or if I have success, I'm going to be put on a bigger stage, so it's easier not to have success. And they are, some people call them competing intentions. Like, I want money, but I really don't want money. Or if I have money, I wonder what that's going to say about me. And they really have fear. And sometimes what they do is they say, "Oh, money's stupid. I don't want to be wealthy," because they have these beliefs. And so, for me, again, I caught myself being really jealous of wealthy people. And I was thinking like, God, they must have cheated to get ahead. And I thought, well, how am I ever going to be wealthy if I am jealous of wealthy people, or I think that they're some type of bad people, or they're not spiritual, or they're not conscious? And there is so much. And to me, money, there is a power around money, but that power can be good. I mean, if I make billions of dollars, I can do a lot of good with billions of dollars. And I don't have to. Some people say, well, I don't want to change. Well, whether you change or not is up to you. I mean, if you change because of money, that's conscious or subconscious choice that you made. And so there is a lot, and a lot of us that came from middle class or lower families, we had some tough times and my dad left, and so I really work a lot around my worth. Sometimes when I'm speaking to a lot of people, for example, especially business people, almost every time, David, it's like at one point in the speech or the workshop, I think, oh my God, who am I to be telling these people, these powerful people, this? Then I changed that self-dialogue. Marianne Williamson has a great quote, who am I not to be teaching these people this?
Yeah, good. As a nomadic person at this point in your life, I would imagine that maybe you've learned some things about trust and about risk-taking.
Yeah, I did. And can I share a little? Can I share with you where I think procrastination, resistance, and fear comes from?
Yeah.
And this is how I sort of simplified it for myself to understand it, and for when I'm doing it speaking. So to me, when we're like 4, 5, and 6, and everybody knows this, there's only one thing that's important in our life, and that's the love and adoration of our caregivers, normally our parents. So when I was 4, I really didn't care, what toys I was playing with or what I was eating, just as long as mom and dad, gave me affection, which is pretty well known. But, and my dad was pretty tough on me, and, he wanted to toughen me up and show me, tough love. So David, if I was in a race with like 100 other kids at 5 years old, and I raced as fast as I can, and I came in 3rd out of 100, knowing my dad was really tough on me, what do you think my dad would have said to me?
Wasn't good enough. How come you weren't number 1?
Yes. Yeah. Why weren't you number 1? You didn't pump your arms hard enough. You didn't put your heart into it. The next race comes 100 kids. I'm 5 years old. I pump my arms as hard as I can. I put my heart into it, and I come in second out of 100. And similar.
Still not good enough, right?
Still not good enough. First loser. And so.
The first loser, right.
First loser. So, keeping in mind that all I really care about is love and adoration of my father, I make this connection in my mind that being first is love. That love is withheld until I achieve, until I become first, until I'm perfect. Similar to that, I'm 6 years old. I get an A+. I go to my mom, and my mom, who means well, but she goes, "Oh, Michael, A+, you're perfect. I love you so much." So there, perfection equals love. And right. So we did that. So, the next time, I have a choice whether I can take a hard test or an easy test. I take an easy test, or taking that the next step. The next time I can take an easy test or a no test, I take no test, because there's no chance of me not being perfect. And to me, that's where this resistance, that's where this fear comes from. When we experience procrastination on some level, whether it's writing a book, starting a company, asking for a raise, asking that cute guy or girl out, that's us holding back because we don't want to put ourselves out there, because we're afraid that if we're not perfect, we won't have that love, or we won't get that affection. And I see this play out in so many different people's lives. It's like we play it safe. We don't even play in the game unless we think we can be first, or we make excuses, or we don't play full into the game. And what I teach is, and what I keep learning myself is, look, I'm not perfect. And I put myself in more games, David, and I'm okay. And it's like I really practice that self-compassion, that self-forgiveness, where, hey, I do something new. I'm on my first podcast. I write my first book. And you know what? It's not going to be perfect. And I may release my book with 2 or 3 typos in it. I'm not going to freak out if people say there's a typo. Like, some people come to me and they say, "Oh my God, you have a typo in your book." I'm like, did you understand what the sentence said? I don't want typos in my book, but look, if you're worried about one typo in a 65,000 page book, read the freaking book. You know what I mean? And so to me, this is a lifelong journey to be okay with not being perfect and embrace my humanity.
Yeah. Did you have to struggle with that as you were writing your book? Were there sort of self-limiting beliefs that kept appearing for you that you had to kind of remind yourself of these things?
Dude, they do that all the time. It does. I go through that thing daily. Doing it. Have you written a book yet, David?
That was a cross that I dragged around in my life for many years because all my students were writing books. And everybody I knew, it seemed, had written a book. And finally, I came to a place where I just kind of realized that, okay, this is like a cross that I'm dragging around in my life. I'm going to get off of it. I'm not just going to. There are a lot of people that haven't written books.
And but look, you did a podcast, which not many people do a video podcast, which is awesome.
Well, at some point, I was approached by an author and ended up co-writing a book. And so for me, that was enough of an experience for me to feel like, okay, yeah, my name is on a book out there.
And I'm sure, you can tell the listeners and the viewers, I mean, with your first podcast or putting this book, isn't there a tremendous amount of things to do, especially the first time it goes out?
Oh, yeah. I should have had my podcast out a lot sooner. 2005 was really the beginning of podcasting as a separate entity. And I wasted a bunch of time trying to get my website just right and so on before ever doing a podcast. And finally, one of my friends confronted me and said, David, just go ahead and do it, And I wish I had done it sooner, so I could have been, well, this is that wanting to be a high achiever again.
Well, but that's it.
At first.
Yeah, and you were like, oh, my website has to be perfect before my podcast goes out. Well, no, it doesn't.
Right.
If you take one of those podcasting courses, it probably almost freaks you out because it's like, oh, I got to do all these things before I get to do a podcast. No, actually, you don't have to do all these things.
Yeah.
Even this book launch, I was like stressing out. I'm not going to get this article out before, and I'm not going to, I'm supposed to contact Forbes to find an author, somebody to review my book. And then I'm like, I don't have to do that. I don't enjoy, chasing up these. So I'm like, you know what, Michael, I'm not going to do that. And maybe I'll sell 20 less books the first day. But, it is, to me, and it just happened like 5 days ago, David, I reflect, I make time for a practice every day. So, I meditate, but, because I'll bring up some of these things to people, I'll meet them and they're like, oh yeah, I do forgiveness, or I do self-forgiveness, or I have self-compassion. I'm like, well, what's your practice around that? Well, I just do it. Well, no, you don't just do it. I mean, it's like, to me, to really evolve, I set 10 minutes every day to really look through my life. Where do I have stress? What am I doing? And to really, to evolve, because unless we put directed intention on these things, you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to be compassionate to myself. And then it just doesn't work that way. It's like a jump shot in basketball or throwing a football. You got to practice this stuff every day. Otherwise it goes away. And that's one of the things I'm proud about my book. It actually has practices in there to do. So it's not just here's some stuff. It's like, here's how we have a community, and here's how you actually continue evolving. Because no matter how good my book is, you're not going to evolve by reading my book. You're going to evolve by putting things into practice into your life. And that's how long-term change happens.
Well, that is a good challenge, and maybe a good place for us to wrap it up, to leave listeners and viewers with that thought, unless there's something else you'd like to close with.
I just encourage everybody to just give yourself a little bit of slack and grace and a break, because I'm sure everybody out there does really awesome things. And so instead of beating yourself up for the one thing you didn't do perfectly, just take a couple minutes to reflect on all the awesome things you did in the last week or so.
Okay. Well, R. Michael Anderson, I want to thank you for being my guest today on Shrink Wrap Radio.
Thanks, Dave. It was really fun. You're a great interviewer, and I just hope to add a little value to everybody's life.